We're live.
Yeah, we're live, man.
Facebook friends and family, we are live, alive. And I'm Peter J with Redline Real Estate Group, and I am sitting next to the man, Kelley Skar. He's the training officer and national operations of Redline Canada. And today we're talking about Zillow. What is a Zillow? Why does it matter? And we're actually announcing a huge partnership that we have with them. So we're going to go over Zillow generally because not a lot of people know actually. The general public, I thought everyone was going to know about this thing, and not a lot of people do. So this is really for you guys, the consumers out there, but also for realtors too, to get a better understanding of where we're coming from with Redline, and no better person to do that than yourself, Kelley. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, man. I appreciate being on your channel and speaking to your audience. So
yeah, and we're live in at Redline right now in the personal studio, which it's cool. It's
our new media studio.
Yeah. The ambiance in here is beautiful.
Yeah, hopefully we got some good audio. If your audience could maybe, it looks like Steven just joined us. If you could just let us know whether the audio is working well.
Yeah, give us a hi. That'd be great. But let's get started. So before we dive into Zillow and what is a Zillow, can you tell everyone at home a little bit more about your role at Redline Canada?
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Operations Officer here at Redline. I do facilitate and focus a lot on the training of our agents. I write a lot of the content that we put out, the emails, done few marketing, that sort of thing. Working in conjunction with my business partners to, try to roll this business forward as best we can and provide the most amount of value that we can to our realtors.
Right. And from my point of view, you do that. There's constant training going on. And this is another, Zillow is another kind of new platform that I feel is giving Redline the edge. But actually, before we go on, let's be very clear. We are definitely biased here, okay? We are Redline all the way. We just announced the partnership with Zillow, and Kelley's going to describe what that actually means. So we're excited about everything, but we are going to talk about maybe some of the people who aren't excited about that in the industry, because there's definitely, I don't know, it's not all beautiful from our point of view it is, but really in the industry, what would you kind of consider Zillow a dark horse for real estate?
That's a good question, I guess. I'm not sure that they're a dark horse. What I would say is that they've been in existence for about 12 years down in the United States, and there's a perception out there that there's a lot of people that have their own opinions about Zillow, whether they sell leads back to the agents. We can get into that in just a second, but just to kind of explain to your audience, what is Zillow? Down in the United States, it's very different than it is here. Here in Canada, we've got a nationalized MLS system. You can search properties from your couch here in Calgary. You can search for a home in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick or Quebec or whatever, right? We've got a nationalized MLS system. Down in the United States, they do not. They used to have something that was very similar, but the Department of Justice about 15 or 16 years ago, I believe it was, decided that that was a bit of a monopoly. They went after them and they basically crushed any sort of nationalized MLS system that they had in the United States. And so as a result, there was a lot of fracturing that went on. There are states in the US that have multiple MLS systems. So for example, the state of Washington has about 6 different MLS providers. So if I were to list a property, say in Seattle, and I wanted somebody south of Seattle or north of Seattle in Spokane to see that property, I would have to actually be a member of the board that provides the MLS. There's no statewide MLS system. There's no national MLS system down in the US. So what Zillow has done is they've come in and they've made partnerships with about 650 different MLS providers in the United States. There's close to 800 in total. So that would be like the equivalent of 800 realtor.cas. So they've gone in and they've made agreements with these different MLS providers. And as a result of the agreements that they have, they're pulling in the listings from realtors that post their properties up for sale through these boards and through these MLS systems. And now in the US, you can search from the comfort of your home. If you live in Seattle, Washington, you can search for a property in Maryland or Maine or Texas or whatever. So it's as close to a national MLS system as they have there.
What I just heard, because that was a lot of information.
Yeah.
What I just heard, and is, let me know if I'm wrong, it sounds like Google and the real estate industry made Zillow. is Zillow. Is that kind of right? It's like based on data. It's just another tool to find homes if you want.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's the ability for the consumer to be able to go onto a platform and search for a property, much like what we have here in Canada in terms of Realtor.ca. It's much more than that though as well. It isn't just about searching for a home with Zillow. It's tax information. It's sold data in the form of a Zestimate. It's how hot or cold is the neighborhood that I'm looking at buying a property in. You can apply for a mortgage through Zillow. Zillow Mortgages just got launched. They bought a mortgage company here earlier this year. So you'd be able to apply for a mortgage straight through the website. School information. Like I said, there's a ton of info. Zillow's goal is to keep you on the platform and to provide as much information as they possibly can so that you're not having to Google things. Like, for instance, I had a client get in touch with me. Actually, it was a potential renter, got in touch with me, and he was looking at moving from Edmonton to Calgary, had no idea where the area was that I had a rental property, had no idea the schools, had no idea about any of this stuff. But could you imagine if there was a portal that he could go on to and search not only for rentals, but also for properties that are for sale, and look at all of the school information, look at the tax information, get all of that info in one spot instead of having to bounce around the Google to be able to get all that info. So it can be time consuming when you're searching for a home and searching for that information. And Zillow, I think, has done it better than most in providing all of that info to the consumer.
Okay. So it is more than just searching for a home. They offer services, goods and services through that, and ultimately full data at your fingertips.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
As much data as they can possibly
as
get,
much
right?
as they have. So there are certain states that are in the U.S. that are non-disclosure states. For instance, Texas is a non-disclosure state. They cannot disclose what the sold prices are.
Right.
So there's estimates don't work in a state like Texas, and I think there's a handful. There's like 4 or 5 states in the U.S. that are non-disclosure states.
Okay.
Canada right now is non-disclosure because we're not disclosing sold data. From what I understand, Korea is looking at providing that onto Realtor.ca in a forum, and it wouldn't be necessarily a Zestimate, but they would be providing sold data through their platform. And so that just got announced here a little while ago. I understand that it's going to be coming through here very, very soon.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Thanks for all that info.
Yeah. So, and just to kind of touch on that as well.
Please.
Sorry to cut you off, but Realtor.ca Korea has really made some great strides here in the last couple of weeks. I've been very quick to jump on Korea and Realtor.ca.
And for people at home that don't know Korea,
it's the Canadian Real Estate Association. That's our governing body, one of them. And so they're the providers of Realtor.ca, the platform that a lot of people utilize. They've made some really great strides here in the last 6 months or so. And knowing that Zillow is coming into our market, they're wanting to try to compete with a company that's got a $10 billion market cap.
Right.
So I as a realtor, I pay and I support the platform, and I truly hope that they can compete. And that's something that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, in our conversation.
Well, that's it. Like get right into it. So you guys announced a few weeks ago that Redline Canada is one of the first partnerships with Zillow Canada.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, what does that mean for the consumer out there if they're thinking of using Redline? Is it an advantage? And what does that mean even for myself and all the other agents at Redline?
Right now, it actually doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
If I'm absolutely perfectly honest. Okay.
Well, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna just shut her down. We're
Thanks
done.
for joining, everyone.
Yeah.
This doesn't matter.
The reason I say that is because we do not right now have the ability to syndicate our listings to Zillow at this point in time. The other layer to that is that they have not launched a Zillow.ca yet in Canada. Their roadmap, their plans are to have something in place by the next 12 to 18 months. Our feeling at Redline is that their tipping point is probably going to be closer to 2 years.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because they've got 95 different member boards that they've got to strike deals with in order to get the listing data to the site. And so what that means is if I provide a listing to my board, that listing gets syndicated or pushed out to a number of different websites through an IDX, which is Internet Data Exchange. So that information goes out to your website, it goes out to my website, it goes out to Remax.ca, it goes out to Century21.ca, it goes out to just a huge amount of websites out there. If we're part of the data distribution facility, which is referred to as the DDF, then it'll go out to sites like Craigslist and Kijiji and a bunch of others like Lovato or something like that. Anyways, there's a number of different, like, a dozen different websites that we can push those listings to get more exposure.
Right.
So with Zillow, they have to go out and strike deals with these 95 different member boards that control 95 different MLSs throughout the country. And I see that as being a bit of an uphill battle for them. And the reason I say that is because they've been talking to the Calgary Real Estate Board since November of 2017.
Okay.
And they still haven't come to any sort of an agreement with the Calgary Real Estate Board at this point. I'm in constant contact with Zillow. I'm in constant contact with Kreb to try to determine when this agreement is going to get ironed out. And when it does finally get ironed out, that will give us as a brokerage the choice, the option to syndicate our listings to the site or not. And that's what it means for all brokerages throughout the country. Just because your board has and will decide whether they're going to allow for the syndication of your company's listings to the Zillow platform, you as the brokerage owner, as the manager of the brokerage, still have the ultimate decision as to whether you want to syndicate that listing off to the Zillow platform.
Right. So ultimately, it's just another tool for the brokerage to use to expose listings,
right,
and drive more traffic to help the agents out.
That's right.
Yeah, and obviously the consumer out, right? Put the consumer in the right hands for the right agent.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you really kind of touched on that, because I mean, it's a 2-year, you kind of like, it doesn't mean anything right now. We're announcing that the partnership is there.
Yeah.
So why would you announce the partnership now if I don't know, it's maybe 2 years away,
mm-hmm.
and maybe longer depending how those things go, right?
Right.
And then what kind of forethought for you and the team at Redline Canada, what kind of forethought goes into making these decisions when you know that you're making the announcement now and that it may or may not even pay off in 2 years? Like, right. What kind of time goes into making that decision?
Well, great question. We, as I said, Zillow started talking to Kreb back in November of 2017. I found out about that conversation in December of 2017, and I brought that conversation to our leadership team in December of last year. And so it took us, 10 months of conversation to decide whether we were going to follow through with this partnership or not.
Right.
And ultimately what it came down to was Zillow came into town. They spoke at our Thrive Not Survive events, the events that we put on quarterly for real estate agents in our city.
Which was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Matt Hendricks came in and spoke to the group, and we wound up having lunch with Matt afterwards and spent some time with him and had a couple of drinks. And, after he kind of explained what the roadmap is for the Canadian real estate industry here in Canada with respect to Zillow, we kind of decided at that point that from what he was telling us just completely made sense to us. And so why did we do it early? I guess it was because we could see this coming. We knew that they were coming into the country. We knew that they were going to make this a success. We knew that they were going to be a competitor of Realtor.ca. And the decision was made ultimately because if there's going to be two platforms, we want our agents to be able to have the ability to be on both platforms. If there's going to be consumer eyeballs on two platforms, we wanted our agents to have that ability to be on both of those platforms. The Zillow platform right now, I think, is better than what Realtor.ca is providing, simply because they just have more of the information that they're able to provide, mind you, to the U.S. consumer. What we're instantly, yeah. That's right. And so what we're going to see in Canada will likely be Zillow version 1.5, right? Like I said, Zillow was started in 2006, and they've been around for a dozen years now, and they've got to this point where they've got all of this information. So they're on like Zillow, 4.5 or 5, Zillow version 5 or whatever. We're going to be starting kind of towards the bottom of where they were, but they've learned a lot of information. They've learned a lot of stuff over what they were doing in the United States. And so, for example, when they first started out, they wanted to sidestep all of the MLSs, and so they went to the brokerages specifically, like targeted the brokerages to get their data from them.
Okay.
And they found that wasn't the right way to go. And they decided early on that they wanted to be in partnership with these MLS providers as opposed to being at loggerheads with them. So that was something that they definitely learned. And coming into Canada, I had said, what do we need to do in order to get our listing syndicated? What kind of data do you need? We can probably gather it up and send it off to you. And they never actually gave me an answer. And that was simply because they told me, basically we want to follow the same path that we followed down in the US, which was very successful for them, and being in partnership with these MLSs as opposed to being against them and trying to sidestep them.
It's gotten them to this point so far, so why not use what works?
That's right.
In a way, right?
So from the agent point of view, we know full well that Zillow has got they've got a market cap of $10 billion. I was at the Zillow forum in Toronto about 3 or 4 weeks, actually about a month ago now, and I got to speak to a lot of people that not only work for Zillow, but people from the US MLS providers that are in partnership with Zillow. Had a lot of great conversations with them. Watched the presentations. Got to understand what the technology, the things that they're focusing on in the future, and how that's going to improve the user and consumer experience. We feel like if Zillow is coming into our country, they're going to be a success, regardless of whether some of the bigger companies out there start syndicating their listings to them or not. Once they have a critical mass of agents and once they have a critical mass of listings throughout the country, they will launch Zillow.ca and they will be a major player in our market. And so it makes sense for our agents to definitely be on the platform. Right now, they're able to, because we're not C2-1 franchise. Currently, that's the only company that's out there that is supplying listings, because they built their own data center. They can provide all of that data off to Zillow. They don't have to rely on the MLSs.
Right.
We don't have millions of dollars to build that kind of repository, right? So they're the only company right now that you can find Canadian listings on the platform. And so right now our agents can gather up reviews, and reviews are ultimately will be very, very important in the future. And so that's another part of the reason why we wanted to get on there early, because we knew that the platform would be opened up to Canadian agents, and you'll be able to put your profile on there and you'll be able to start gathering up reviews, which ultimately will become more important once they fully launch in Canada and they've got that critical mass.
Right.
Simply because they've got one program called the Zillow Premier Agent Program. This is the paid side of things where agents can pay to advertise on the platform. You as a paid advertiser, your profile is on the right-hand side below the listing agent. And a lot of times when I'm looking on Zillow.com and looking at properties in the United States, a lot of times the listing agent doesn't even have a full profile filled out. Like the listing agent doesn't even have an avatar. They don't even have a picture,
right?
Let alone have any reviews, right? So if
I'm cartoon picture of me, right?
Well, that's right. It isn't even that. It's just a blank dot.
Egg.
It's a circle and it's blank. So when I look at that, and as when I'm wearing my consumer hat and I'm looking at that, I'm going, well, I want to be able to see a face. I want to be able to connect with somebody. And oh, by the way, they don't have any ratings at all, like 0 stars. So what does that say about this person that syndicated their listing to Zillow? It just tells me that they don't really care, that their listing is up there, right? And so I'm going down to the next person that's down below that, that's got a picture, that's got 12 or 15 reviews. I want to see if that person is actually, what kind of reviews that person has, whether they're 3-star, 4-star, 5-star.
Right.
I want to see what other people are saying about that person before I even connect with them. And that trickles down. It isn't just shopping for a home. It's everything that we do, right? Looking for a book on Amazon, I'm looking at the reviews to see if the book was any good.
Right.
If I'm looking for a rental car in Phoenix, Arizona, and I don't want to go through some of the bigger places like Budget or Alamo or whatever, and I want to go with a smaller rental company, I'm looking at their ratings online to see it, like their Google ratings, right? So I think ratings and reviews are becoming more important, and making it an easier decision for the consumer is to decide whether they want to follow through with purchase of that product.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be real estate.
Right. So I guess a bit of a counterpoint or that I kind of heard with that is that, so if I'm an agent that paid to be on Zillow and I got really good reviews, isn't that a little misleading to a degree? Because like I've paid for it, I got a lot of reviews on Zillow, but then if you check my Google reviews, it's not what the Zillow reviews are. Like, right. So I don't know, like, is that maybe one of the reasons you think people have a bad rap, or Zillow has a bad rap, sorry, within the industry? I think because even right there, that could be, I mean, that's not your fault if that is the case, because right. We do start going on reviews. And I guess ultimately for the consumer out there is what I would say is that, Zillow's a trusted platform that real estate professionals do use, but still do a bit more due diligence in the research as well. Maybe don't just trust the Zillow reviews. Check other reviews too, maybe, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Because I don't know. I kind of heard that in the way too, right? Is that you could, well, I guess you don't pay for the good reviews, you pay for exposure.
Yeah. So you're as an advertiser, you're not paying for the reviews. So when I finish a transaction with a client, right now we're as a company using Real Satisfied, which is a company that provides an opportunity for us to be able to push out a survey to the person that just did a transaction with one of our agents and gives them an opportunity to leave a testimonial.
Right.
And so it isn't a star type rating. It's like, well, I guess it is a star type rating, but it's based on 3 different metrics, 3 different points, the survey, right? With Zillow, it's different in that there's no survey. You just have an opportunity to leave a testimonial for that client or for that agent and kind of rate that person, right?
Okay.
So anybody can get reviews. You don't have to be paying for the platform to be able to get reviews. So
and they're not necessarily good reviews. Like it'd be the user to give the honest review.
That's right.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
I misheard you then.
Yeah, and so it goes off IP address. So if you're trying to create multiple accounts on Zillow, it won't allow you to do that.
They know.
Yeah, like they're stopping you from gaming the system.
Right.
So you can't game it. Like with Google, I could go in there and start, 16 different Gmail accounts, Google accounts, and I could go in and start giving myself 5-star reviews if I wanted to. Right. So that's a way of kind of gaming the system. So I agree with you. I think that if you are a consumer of a product or a service, certainly have a look to see what's on TripAdvisor or on, some sort of rental car company's website, but then also go over to Google and Google that person and see what comes up.
Yeah.
I think that's prudent advice as a consumer of goods or services, right?
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
So let's roll into Zillow. Zillow isn't, it's not the most, nicest subject in the real estate industry right now. I mean, we have our own private Facebook groups within realtors, and it's a hot topic right now. It's actually way hotter than I anticipated.
Yeah.
It goes really deep, and I mean, we're not going to get into like the crazy depths of it because really it comes down to business models and it affecting kind of different industry members.
Right.
But why do you think Zillow has a bad rap within the industry? Why are industry members scared of Zillow right now, in your opinion?
Canadian realtors specifically, simply because Zillow has been around for a dozen years and it's been in the United States solely. And there are less than 10% of the real estate community in the United States that are paid advertisers on the platform. There's 1.34 million realtors in the United States. Currently, right now, Zillow has about 100,000 people 100,000 realtors that are advertising on the platform. So it's a little bit less than 10%. The biggest argument that I see out there is that Zillow sells our leads back to us. That's probably the biggest argument. The second biggest argument is that Zillow wants to become a brokerage, and so they're going to put me out of business. They're going to put my business partners out of business.
I know. I laugh at that all the time because who cares even if they do? Like, that's just my perspective. But
so in saying all of that,
but please continue.
Yeah, in saying all of that, I mean, it's just I see it a little bit differently, and I said this in one of the groups the other day. I see Zillow a little bit differently than a lot of people. I think I have met a lot of people that work for Zillow and a lot of people that are in partnership with Zillow. And I've met some people that have ended partnerships with Zillow. And so I've listened to all sides of this argument. I've been watching Zillow since I started in this business 11 years ago. I knew about them at year 1 that Zillow was in the United States. Year 6 within my own business, I knew that they were coming to Canada. So about 5 years ago, my prediction was that it's only a matter of time before they show up on the doorstep.
A natural progression.
Absolutely. Like they're, continually looking for different markets. And so I guess I could counteract some of those things, but the way that I see Zillow is just another tool in the toolbox. It's another platform for agents to be able to advertise and generate leads for themselves. I don't see them as a platform that takes our leads and sells them back to us, because the way that I look at it is you've got a website, I've got a website. Most of the realtors that are in the top 5 to 10% of sales within our board have websites, and
multiple websites,
and multiple
lots
that's
of
right.
websites.
There's tons of them out there, and so
it's a business model.
That's right. Each of those websites has an IDX, like what we talked about earlier. So an internet data exchange. And so I'm showcasing Peter's listings on my website and vice versa. I could be running ads pointing people back to that IDX that generates leads for me. And maybe that lead is coming in through one of your listings, right? So could you look at an IDX provider and look at Zillow and say the same thing, that this IDX provider, call it Real Estate Webmasters or Boomtown or Commissions Inc. or My Real Page, doesn't really matter who the IDX provider is? Could you say the same thing, that REW is taking my leads and selling them to another agent or selling them back to me? I can't see the argument when I look at it in that context.
Right.
If
we're all doing it.
That's right.
It just sounds like they're doing it better. Like, yeah, ultimately, right?
If I'm choosing to pay for advertising on a platform like Zillow, my profile is down the right-hand side of the page. It's below the listing agent. When the client or the potential client, the consumer, decides that they're interested in the property and they fill out the form, that information goes to the person that paid for the placement. Right. And so they do kind of a round robin type scenario. So if there's 3 people that have bought in the United States zip codes, right? So if there's 3 or 4 people that have bought into that zip code, those 3 or 4 people are placed underneath the listing agent. If that consumer decides that they want more information on that property, that lead goes to one of those paid advertisers.
So that sounds very similar, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounds almost the exact same as if I made my own Facebook ad right now promoting your property,
yeah,
and narrowing it down to a postal code, an area, which we do.
Yeah.
Isn't it that? It's just another degree of that to it.
It's very similar to that for sure. Yeah. I mean,
what I'm ultimately saying is that it's just another tool to generate a lead.
Right.
It's not stealing from anyone.
The other, yeah, exactly. And the other argument is, well, you're using my listing to take my lead. And my argument back would be, you don't have a lead unless you pay to advertise for that lead.
Right.
Unless you pay to market that listing, right?
Correct.
So if you're not paying for the marketing to get your listing found, to generate that lead, there is no lead to be had.
Yeah.
It's a chicken before the egg type scenario.
Well,
right?
And we discussed this earlier, and we're obviously on the same wavelength of thought there, is that you have a house that you're not generating leads on that's for sale. I generate a lead. I bring in a buyer,
right,
that buys the home. You sell the home.
Am I going to ask you where you got the buyer from?
Did I steal from you in that situation, Kelley?
Yeah.
Or did I help bring the transaction and the ultimate goal of selling and buying to fruition?
Well, and that's, you can use that with any type of marketing. A friend of mine, Sean Carpenter, had mentioned this in one of these threads, multiple threads in these groups that we're involved in. And he said, well, what if I place a for sale sign on my property and on my listing, and your client drives by it and calls you up and says, hey, I saw this listing. It's a new listing on my street. This guy's got it listed. I want to go in and have a look at it. Well, whose lead is that? Is it your lead? Is it like, if it wasn't your client and they called you instead of calling me, like, am I going to get mad at you because you stole my lead?
Oh, and because you paid, close the deal,
right? Because you paid to put the sign in the front yard, and,
yeah,
right. So I have a hard time coming to an understanding of how that's supposed to work. Like, Zillow is stealing our leads, and so if you look at it in the context of them being just another IDX provider that's allowing the listing agent or the brokerage to push the listings out to get more eyeballs on the property, and somebody chooses to pay for advertising or placement, then I don't understand what the problem with that is. The other argument, I guess, that agents have with that is that if they feel it being misleading, right? So they click on the person that's got the avatar, the face, and the 4-star reviews or 5-star reviews, and that information, their contact information goes to that person, or they fill out the form and that information goes, instead of going to the listing agent. You can still contact the listing agent through Zillow.
Right.
Like contacting the listing agent through Zillow is still an option. Like, you can click on their profile and send them a message. But here's the thing: as a consumer of goods, would you rather go through the person that is representing the seller on that property, or would you rather have your own representation? Because here in Calgary, in Alberta, we're a designated agency brokerage, which means if Peter were to represent both the buyer and the seller in a transaction, he becomes a facilitator at that point and can't represent either side. He can't represent the buyers. He can't represent the sellers. He cannot give advice. And so you as a buyer, would you rather have your own representation, somebody to sit down and say, here are all the comparables on this property. I feel like they've got this property overpriced. I think that we can write an offer, negotiate them down, and this is where I think they're going to go, and this is how we're going to do it. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have somebody say, okay, Mr. Buyer, here are all the comparables. Where do you want to start? Right. So that's the argument that I have in terms of double ending. And some people make their living off of double ending properties, and that's great. But at the end of the day, the way that I look at it, I think the way that we look at it as a company is what's best for the consumer, right? And so when going back to that previous question, when you asked me, why did we do this for, like, what does it mean to the consumer? Ultimately, I do believe that Zillow is going to be here. I think that they're going to provide potentially a superior product to Realtor.ca, and I think that it makes sense for us to have multiple platforms that the consumer can search from.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have a website.
Right.
And
right.
we as a company would not be providing a website to our agents if we didn't believe in that.
Awesome point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for all of that. I mean, I think we touched a lot of points. I mean, it goes really deep, right? I mean, we could talk about this for a while, but I feel like we've definitely generally covered what Zillow is, why we're doing it. Before we take off for the day and continue the things that we do, what does the future look like for Redline?
Oh man, good question. I
want to know everything.
Yeah. We're starting our strategic planning for 2019 for the brokerage. We really feel like we've hit a great critical mass here with the number of agents that we've got. We feel like we've got a really great group and an amazing culture that we really want to share with the world. We're working on some things in the background that are going to allow to kind of bring our model and our plan into potentially other markets outside of Calgary as well as Brantford. So look for that in 2019. It's something that we're really passionate about and working to strive for. So
great. Yeah, I'm excited too, because it just keeps getting better, man. It just does. I've been here for over a year now, and it keeps evolving. And I mean, things like this, it's being able to have the open, honest conversation about these platforms, and even as an agent, be given the tools. It's really great. I love it here. So
awesome.
But you know that. Anyway.
I know that.
Everyone knows that's watching right now. So before we leave, where can everyone find you online? If you want people to find you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you're an agent, you're watching this right now, you can feel free to reach out to me, Kelley at redlinerealestate.ca. That's Kelley, Kelley, not IE, not Y. It's Kelley, Kelley. You can shoot me a text, 403-827-7527. Give me a call. You can find us through our multiple websites.
Yeah. And even on this link here, I mean, I'll tag Kelley, and but do us a favor, ask questions. We'll keep the conversation rolling, and share the video, guys. Let people know what Zillow is. And if you feel like we didn't touch on anything, let's keep it going, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
I'd be happy to jump in here and answer any questions anybody might have.
Thanks, Kelley.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Have a great day, everyone.
All right.
Yeah.
Cheers. We're going to shut this off now.
Cool. That was awesome.